Welcome to the new school. We're so excited to partner with the Recording Academy this afternoon to present The Day That Music Cares, Living in Music, a discussion, wisdom worth sharing from music makers. There's a lot of very heavy hitters on this stage that we feel very honored to feature today. And without further ado, I would love to introduce today's facilitator, Monica Ryan. Monica Ryan is an award-winning New York-based jazz singer, songwriter, producer, and engineer and recording artist. A graduate of the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music, Ryan has released 16 albums throughout her career. Known for her ability to blend classic jazz styles with contemporary influences, she creates music that resonates with both traditional jazz lovers and modern audiences. Ryan's latest album, Sweetness, released in 2025, continues her tradition of crafting new jazz standards with timeless appeal and modern relevance. As a voting member of the Recording Academy and a frequent performer at prestigious jazz venues and festivals worldwide, Monica Ryan is a respected and influential figure in the jazz community. Without further ado.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here at my alma mater with these incredible music makers and music professionals on behalf of the Recording Academy's Day That Music Cares. First, we have Michael Goldstone, Goldie. Michael Goldstone is a founder, co-owner of the acclaimed independent record label Mom and Pop Music. Known for his A&R expertise, he has signed influential artists including Regina Spektor, Pearl Jam, Rage Against the Machine, and Tegan and Sara. Since Goldstone founded Mom and Pop in 2008, the label has released music from artists such as MGMT, Courtney Barnett, Magdalena Bay, Orion Sun, Beach Bunny, Del Watergap, and others. Goldstone was recently recognized with the 2025 Seymour Stein Global A&R Award at MuseExpo, and he has been honored on Billboard's Indie Power Players list. In 2024, he received the Transformer Award from We Are Moving the Needle for his work supporting gender equity in the music industry. He lives in New York City with his family. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So I'm going to ask you this question that I'm going to ask everybody. You get to be the first.
I get to jump in.
You get to jump in. I can't wait to hear what you say.
Okay.
If you were able to give a piece of advice to your younger self, if you were able to pull your younger self aside and say, "Hey, Goldie, this is going to be a game changer for you," what advice would you give the younger you?
Okay. I think there's a simplicity to this answer, but I'll try not to ramble too much. But it's really the context of everybody is somebody. And when I started the label in 2008, I had been doing it for 2 weeks. And I was working out of a management company's offices, and some dude came strolling down the hall, and he kind of popped his head into my office and said, "Hey, Goldie, what are you doing here?" And I said, "I just started a label 2 weeks ago. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no roster and we're just getting going." And he said, "It's Jay. You're really so kind and so thoughtful and treating me with a level." This is, by the way, back in the days where people talked on phones.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to preface that. And he said, "You're always so polite, when you called," and it was really appreciated because there were so many people that just wouldn't stop to sort of pause and take the time of day. He said, "If I can ever help you, please let me know." So he handed me a card. I put it in my pocket. About 45 minutes later, I looked at it, and it said, Jay Lepus, head of iTunes.
Yeah.
Used to be an assistant, helped us launch the label, put our records everywhere, and started, and basically helped us start the label. And the long and short of it is that it's those relationships that you want to maintain along the way, because everyone will end up somewhere interesting, and sometimes you will end up really benefiting from the fact that you take the approach that you're in it for the long haul, and meeting somebody that might be helping out at even an event like this will be growing and becoming a force. So that's what I took from that.
Amazing. That's a great piece of advice.
Okay.
I think that'll help a lot of people. Powerful. Next, we have the amazing Mia Moravis. Mia serves on the Board of Governors of the Recording Academy in New York's chapter and is a member of the Recording Academy's Producer and Engineers Wing and Songwriters and Composers Wings. She is a Tony-nominated and 3-time Emmy-nominated producer. Mia has served as producer, executive producer, associate producer, and performer on multiple Grammy-winning and nominated albums. She is a Remy Award filmmaker, Seeking Heat by David Byrne, and an award-winning actress, and a 28-time ASCAP Plus award-winning songwriter for television and musical theater. Mia is a playwright and a producer of audiobooks and audio theater for iHeartRadio, and is a producer of the upcoming documentary Sweet Harmony, The Manhattan Transfer Story, directed by Oscar nominee Miles Mogilescu. I don't know that name. Mia is a creator of Session Girls the Musical, available on Center Stage Records and multiple streaming platforms. And she is one of the producers of the hit Broadway show, currently open, Smash. Mia, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So if you were to pull aside young Mia at the beginning of Mia's career, and you were to lovingly say to Mia, Mia, I have a piece of advice for you that is going to help you, what would that be?
Oh, goodness, where do we start? I think that, no, I don't, I'll take out the qualifier. I don't think I know. I would say to her, I'm very emotional. I'm an empathic, and I also would say that can make for that kind of empathy, and that kind of active emotional landscape can make for an accidentally noisy mind. So that having a noisy mind can get in the way of creating, or it can make us put a third eye upon ourselves as we create. And what I would say to her is, quiet your mind, restore order, and you're allowed to feel joy and comfort as you create whatever it is you want to create, and definitely do it. Don't try to be someone over there that's already a famous person, and there's myriad people we could name, but don't try to imitate a famous person. Just do what it is you do, and do it with joy. And also make sure that you do it from a place of honesty to yourself, so that whatever you put out there is something that people may wish to hear, but it's important that you put out what you really are, because we already have all these other things that you should not imitate. And also, I would just say everything will work out, and you just have to trust that it's so.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. That's wonderful. Yay. Well, next we have the powerful Tracy Jordan. I was reading your bio and thinking, wow, you've done some incredible things. So now I will share with everybody else. Tracy J. Jordan is a pioneering music industry executive with over 40 years of experience. She has played a crucial role in developing and promoting iconic artists such as Aretha Franklin, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Whitney Houston, and the Rolling Stones. Jordan's career includes significant positions at major companies: Senior Director of Talent and Industry Relations at SiriusXM Satellite Radio from 2013 to 2023, Vice President of Music and Programming and Talent Development at MTV Networks from 1992 to 1994, Vice President of Artist Development and Video Production at Motown Records from 1988 to 1992, Director of R&B, Artist Development and Publicity at Arista Records from 1985 to 1988. And she is the daughter of NEA jazz master Sheila Jordan and jazz pianist Duke Jordan. I studied with your mom here at the New School, who I love dearly.
Thank you.
Tracy has music in her blood. She has been a trailblazer, becoming the first African-American VP of video production at an American record label, and the first African-American VP of music talent development at MTV. Jordan's expertise spans artist development, talent booking, video production, and event management. She has worked with a diverse range of artists, from veterans like Earth, Wind, and Fire, Usher, Maxwell, Mariah Carey, and Mary J. Blige, to contemporary stars such as Cardi B and Post Malone. Currently, she is a partner at Jordan Lazen Productions and a consulting producer for Suzanne DePass Jones Entertainment. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you.
So, if you were able to have the chance to talk to young Tracy and to say, Tracy, you have an incredible career ahead of yourself. Here's something I'd love for you to know at the beginning. What would it be?
Thank you so much for having me here today. And I think the thing that I would tell myself is, as a person who loves and thrives on artist development, to never judge a book by its cover, and that packaging an artist is everything. You have to remain true to their self, but an example of that would be Boyz II Men. We were in Jamaica doing a special for BET Networks, Soul by the Sea, and Michael Bivins, who ran up to me and he was like, "Yo, Trey, you gotta come hear my guys sing. You gotta come hear them sing." So I went over, and I was in the middle of production, so I was like a little bit, harried. And I came over, they were all around the piano, and Boyz II Men started singing. And I looked at them, and they had on every neon color in the rainbow suits with rhinestones embedded into them. And these shoes, I don't even want to go there. And I said to myself, oh God, this is what Gerald Busby signed. What are we going to do with this? But I listened to them sing, and I was like, wow, they really sound amazing. And I looked at Michael, and I was like, they're really good, but you got to do something about that image, because that ain't working. And Bivins went back, and he dressed them in Argyle socks and vests, and he called it the Alexander Vanderpool era, after a character on like General Hospital or something like that, and gave Boyz II Men a look that was completely different than the gangster rap that was like out there and happening in R&B and in hip hop. And came back with this image for them that was just phenomenal. And more modern to today is Dolce. I was like looking through like some pictures on my phone, and I found a picture of her when she first came up to SiriusXM, and I booked her for an interview, and she looks nothing like she looks today. I mean, she's just amazing. So I think it's like with artist development, packaging is everything. If the raw talent is there, and the vocals are there, and the musicianship is there, you have to sit with the artist and figure out what image makes them comfortable. Who are they? And dress them and style them accordingly.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. Don't judge a book by its cover, because the cover can be changed.
Exactly.
The book doesn't change, but the cover changes. I love it. Beautiful. Okay. Next, we have Ben Rubin. Ben Rubin is a 2-time Grammy-nominated producer, a mixer and a bassist, and a composer known for his genre-bending work in hip-hop and jazz. He has been recognized 7 times as a rising star in Downbeat Magazine's International Critics Poll. Rubin has collaborated with artists like Masta Ace, sorry, Donnie McCaskill, and Marshall Crenshaw, and has over 150 recording credits across various genres. His work includes producing albums like Freebird and co-producing the Grammy-nominated Second Half. Rubin has also composed scores for films and has played bass with a diverse range of artists, including Patti Smith and Bill Frisell. It's so great to have you here, Ben. Thank you for being here.
I'm happy to be here.
So, Ben,
What's the question?
what's the question? So if you were to meet young Ben, Ben's just coming out of Smalls, it's college time, and Ben's beginning his career in music, and you know that, there's a great career coming, and there's going to be things he's going to need to know, and you already know them. What one piece are you going to give him?
I think the thing I would focus on is self-care and preparing myself for the life of an artist, which is full of ups and downs, highs and lows. And I don't think anyone told me that when I was a kid, and that like some years are going to be great, some are going to be awful. There's going to be times when you have no work, then there's going to be times when you have way too much work. And how do you manage all that and keep yourself emotionally regulated? I mean, I've suffered depression and anxiety my whole life, and I really wish I'd started taking antidepressant medication much sooner. That's a little bit of practical advice. Don't wait on that. But I'd also probably tell myself to define success in multiple ways, because making money is one thing, and that is definitely one measure of success, but there's lots of other measures of success too, like the art you're making, first of all, and that is not related to money, so it's like kind of have to I would probably remind myself that as an artist, what you're in is just not a business. Like as an artist, you're there to create something that will evoke emotion in other people, and that is just unrelated to making money in my mind. And then I think I would also tell myself that I should practice a shit ton more. That everyone you hear out there who's like, you love, they practice their asses off. And,
That's true.
I would have practiced more had I really known that and just didn't tell myself, oh, it's just going to work out. Because the other thing I'd probably tell myself is be organized and deliberate.
Yeah.
And to really, not just go with the flow so much. There's really, being deliberate and organized is not always a quality that artists have. So it's really important, because even when you have a manager, you still are managing yourself. Even when you have people around you, if you don't keep on top of everything, nothing's gonna happen. That's been my experience anyway. And so, when you find those right people, stick with them and make that a partnership, but, be ready to depend on yourself.
I love that. Take care of yourself, practice, depend on yourself. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Next, we have Lee Danné, who is Madam President of the New York chapter of the Recording Academy. All right, and in addition to being Madam President, Lee has a wonderful career. Lee is a 30-year veteran of the music industry, recognized for her expertise in A&R and artist development. She has held senior roles at Sony Music, Epic and Columbia Records, and Warner Chappell Music Publishing, where she's worked with artists like John Mayer, Brandi Carlile, Train, and Bruce Hornsby. Currently, Danae is head of A&R at 30 Tigers, supporting a diverse roster including Corinne Bailey Ray, Bella Fleck, Amos Lee, and Taj Mahal. She also leads. What?
That is diverse.
It's very diverse. I know, it's incredible. Sorry, I got distracted by that. Taj Mahal, thank you. She also
Worthy distraction.
she also leads Knockout Noise, a music therapy initiative through her company Good Works Music. A Cornell University graduate with a BA in English Literature, Danae is an adjunct professor at NYU's Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music and actively mentors through Grammy U. And she is the music. She serves as president of the New York chapter of the Recording Academy and lives in New York City.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. So,
Okay.
if you were to take young Lee aside, young Lee has just gotten her degree in English literature, and she's looking at the vast expanse of life ahead. And you know, for having being Lee of now, all that has transpired, and you want to give one piece of advice to young Lee, what would it be?
I thought about this a lot, and listening to everyone else's words of wisdom, it's actually really inspiring, and I'm glad nobody said the one that I was going to say, because I wouldn't have anything else to say. The one thing that kind of kept coming back to me when I was thinking about this, actually I'd say a lot of things to myself, but the one thing is don't be afraid of failure. Because when I was starting out in the business, and I was, fortunate to sort of move through the very beginnings of my career, pretty fast, and I found myself in a, kind of a big job without as much real experience, just a lot of passion and a little bit of good luck, because that's, kind of what helps you in this business. Luck and timing is a great way to, it's a great sort of complement to the success, to the talent and the readiness that you have, and sometimes it works against you, sometimes doesn't. But for me, finding myself in a position where there were a lot of senior people around me and a lot of really experienced executives and great mentors, that was a lot of pressure to succeed, a lot of pressure to be right all the time. And when you're an A&R person, you sort of live and die by those decisions. And to something Tracy was saying before, like I've always had a heart for artist development. So my gut wants to do things, and I see things sort of further along than they might be. So that's a lot of risk. And as an A&R person, you take a lot of risks. That's, the bigger the risk, the bigger reward, but also the more likely you're going to fail along the way. And I don't think anyone goes through a career without failures of all sorts, sometimes minor, sometimes really significant, losing jobs, and the first time I lost a job, I hadn't really gotten my sea legs. I hadn't had the confidence yet of being sort of a successful executive. So I think at that point in time, if I had just sort of taken a step back to say, it's okay, I know what I'm doing, I'm smart, I'm capable, I'm going to work hard, my gut tells me things, and I do listen to my gut. That's a big part of, also sort of being an artist development-minded executive, is really trusting your gut. But even with all of that, I'm going to be wrong, and I'm going to fail at something, or I'm going to sign an artist that doesn't succeed in the way that I thought. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of that, and don't be afraid to make decisions because of the fear of failure. Because I think if you make a decision out of fear, you're probably going to compromise what your gut is telling you, and you're going to make a decision that you either think other people want you to make, or that you think people want to hear, versus what your gut is telling you. So maybe it's a combination. Don't be afraid of failure, but also trust your gut, because if your inner voice is telling you something, you should listen. And then if you fail, you learn from that. And I think in my own experience, and I could probably have more examples of this than we have time for today, I've probably learned more from the times that things haven't worked out, or the times I've made a decision that didn't materialize in the way I envisioned it, than when things happen and you have a successful outcome.
you're not going to take that moment, or it's hard, you're not likely to take that moment to reflect, why did it all work, as much as you might take that moment when you fail or when something goes wrong to say, why didn't this work? And that's something I didn't really start understanding until sort of midway through my career, where when something really big didn't work out, well, why is that? Okay, don't do that again. What can we do to mitigate that from happening, and what can I learn from this experience? And whether it's losing a job or making a decision that doesn't pan out, I think if you're fearful of the outcome, if you're fearful of either being wrong, failing, or losing a job along the way, you're not going to be true to yourself. You're not going to be true to what your gut is telling you, and you're probably more likely to make the wrong decision. So yeah, don't be afraid to fail.
I love that. That's powerful. Yeah, because no risk, no reward is truly,
Yeah.
I think, life.
I think we can all say that, in this business, so much of it is risk. There's, again, luck, timing, talent. It's a combination of all of it, but the bigger the risk, the better the reward.
But also, Lee, what you said about like looking back at what went wrong and how you would do it differently, that really does teach you so many lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. Beautiful advice for all of the people at the beginning of their careers, or at a landing overlooking where they've been and where they want to go. I would say for me in my career, there's so many things I'd love to tell younger Monica, but one of the things that I would tell her is, you know who you are. Don't always listen to everybody's opinion about what you should do. Because I listened to a lot of opinions. I'm someone who I love it when everybody's happy. When there's a win-win, I'm the happiest person. And that's always what I'm trying to do, always trying to make everybody happy. And I like that about myself. However, when making my art, I used to run things like a democracy when I was the boss. And I have learned over the years to be the boss. It's not a democracy. I mean, I want you to be happy, but ultimately I'm the boss, And so that was a lot of learning for me. But I would tell younger me that for sure. Just be the boss, keep being kind, keep making people happy, but when the time comes, you make the decision.
Amen.
So, all right, I have another question which I dropped, and I'm going to bet it because, let's see.
Have it for you?
No, let's see. Okay, I got it. I read it from the floor. All right. How many times have we dropped music in the middle of a performance? Something falls off the music stand, and you're like, wait, what was that?
You're going to wing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I can see it from here. Okay, so this next question is sort of for anybody who feels like jumping in and addressing it. So every career faces challenges. Every career faces surprises, things that come up that you just would never have anticipated. What's a surprise, a challenge that cropped up at some point and you didn't expect it, but you solved it? What was the challenge and what was the solve? I can start if you need me to start. Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem.
Deep question.
No problem. There was a time that I was making a record with a large group, and I self-produce. And so I had hired a friend to co-produce with me, and they weren't doing the job, and they were a longtime friend, experienced producer. And they just weren't doing the job. They were letting their own life get in between them and our timeline. And I bumped the timeline a few times. And then I said, well, that's it. Like, I've got these great musicians and this great studio, and people from big stars bands were all coming to play this music. And it was a sort of well-orchestrated event. And he kept trying to cancel it on me. And I couldn't let that happen. People were flying in and stopping their schedules. So he was also going to be the arranger, and he arranged part of half of the songs. And we get to the studio time, and there's basically no arrangements. There's part of arrangements. And we record the first day, and as we're there, we go there. I'm making up arrangements with the band in the studio, and we record the rhythm section. And then I had to let him go because I couldn't keep him because he didn't do the job. And he tried to cancel with the horns for the next day. Anyway, I got on the phone. I had a situation where I had a record planned with a large group with half arrangements, and the other producer left and canceled the horns. So that was a surprise. And what I did was I stayed calm. I stayed positive. I isolated what we needed to do. We needed to do the rhythm section that first day. They were there. We made up arrangements. We left spaces for horns, and we didn't know what the horns would play, but we left holes for them. And then I had two of the guys were able to come back, and I needed a third. The other guy couldn't come. So I found somebody I knew who was in Aretha's band, who was traveling through New York, who had that morning off. And I hired him to come in. And I said, oh, and by the way, we don't have horn arrangements, but we have 3 horns. Are you comfortable with that? And he said, yes. So I had the 3 horn players, and I had explained the situation to them, and I said, are you guys comfortable with co-arranging horn parts for these 10 songs in the studio as we go? And they were. And so we got through it. I didn't expect to have it all crumble, but the lesson in there was stay cool, isolate the parts, find the right people. They're around. This is New York City. People are either here or passing through. Make sure they're comfortable with the job and they can do it. Make sure they work well together. And then what they did in the studio, it was so beautiful. They sat down, they listened to what we recorded the day before, and they said, who wants the intros? Who wants the A section? Who wants the bridge? And they broke it up between them, and they wrote all their parts. And it's a beautiful album. You wouldn't know. They were all written in the studio. It's very well arranged. Everybody was happy, and the only thing that we all agreed on is that I would say it was co-arranged by the entire group. It was a great magic trick, I'll tell you. But I didn't expect it, and we did it. And that was my big challenge that we overcame. I knew I could do it. That was what I learned from it. Nothing is going to be too hard. You can do it. Okay. Any surprise?
Okay. This is Tracy Jordan. And when I was at MTV, we were doing the MTV Movie Awards, and I had booked Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre to make an announcement, to announce one of the awards. So when Snoop got to the location, he was like acting a little bit strange. And he said, Trey, I need a cool place to just like chill out after we do the award. Can you put me someplace? And I'm like, okay, I thought that was strange. So they go on, they announce, and they do the award. And I take Snoop and I put him in a trailer where the artist was not coming until the second half of the show. So I put him in there, I give him Kentucky Fried Chicken, I give him video games, and he's in there and he's happy as a clam. So then I'm standing backstage with another artist, and Joel Gallen, who was the director, producer of the award show, is like, Tracy, what's your 20? And I'm like, what do you mean, what's my 20? I'm standing backstage. Well, the sheriff is here looking for Snoop Dogg. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, they're here to arrest him. And I'm like, I jump back into immediate PR mode. Snoop Doggy Dogg arrested backstage at MTV Awards. And I'm like, that's not happening. And I run back to the audience where Suge Knight and Dre are sitting, and I'm like, Suge, the sheriff is here to arrest Snoop Dogg. We have to get him off the property. So he gets up, and obviously they knew what was happening and were playing me like I was a demo, okay? So he runs off, he goes in, he gets the car. Meanwhile, I go back to the trailer where I put Snoop. I open up the door. It's like a Cheech and Chong movie with the smoke coming out of the trailer. And I'm like, Snoop, you got to get out of here. The sheriff's here. Oh, okay. So he gets up, comes out. I grabbed this garbage bag full of Converse gear that they had sent over for him, throw it over my back, get him down to the car, and here comes Suge in one of those hydraulic, cars, like the top down and everything. So here comes like a low rider, pulling up in front of the trailer. Incognito. And they throw the stuff in, Snoop gets in with Suge, and they go rolling off into the sunset. And I get back to my hotel room later that night, and it was the night that he turned himself in for, murder was the case and the whole nine. But that was like quick thinking on my feet, on my part. I give
Yes,
myself a pat on
very
the back
quick.
because
Yes.
I did not want him to be arrested because this was a big deal for him. It was like the first time he had ever been, booked to do a big MTV show, and he was like so looking forward to it. And I did not want him to have the headlines of being arrested there.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that for MTV either. So, yeah.
That's amazing. What an incredible story. I feel like I could visualize the entire thing as you were describing it, too. What a
And now
wow.
look at him, right?
I know. Now
The
we're still
Olympics.
friends to this day. I still talk to him and everything, and he always remembers that fateful day, Trey.
He was the darling of the Olympics.
He was.
He really was.
But the thing that I'm also feeling is that you were really caring about how, not just about MTV, but how he felt and his experience and what it meant to him, big and little picture. And that's incredible. That's
No,
great.
I worked with them from the beginning at MTV, and I did not want to see that relationship destroyed. And I wanted to protect him, but I also wanted to protect the company I worked for.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
good PR training from the early days.
Yeah.
How is Snoop Dogg not getting arrested at the MTV Awards not good press?
Well,
Today, maybe more so than back
for what he
then.
was being arrested for was a little.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Anybody? Yeah.
All right, I'll go because nothing can top that story. So I'll just go for something.
not.
Yeah, I'm going to go with something entirely different because I can't even. That's the best story I've ever heard.
Everything is good.
Everything is So from the other side of things, I guess. I'm not going to say who the artist is, but and you might not know who the artist is anyway. But very early on in my career, I signed an artist that really I found just graduating high school and very very early on in her career, and had the bones of what I thought was an incredibly amazing record full of just really deep songs that were way beyond her life experience at 17 when I first met her. Made a record, was very successful, sort of, a platinum record, which, back then wasn't as hard to do as it is today. But still, very successful. And along the way, and back then, I guess I have to preface this a little bit, back then, most of the artists, all the artists I worked with, but most artists did not collaborate with other writers to the degree that they do now. And even now in all genres, rock, alternative, there's just the collaborative process has become much more customary. Back then, working with a pop artist or a singer-songwriter, if they wrote songs, they often just wrote their own records. And so this was an artist who wrote her own record, no collaborators, no help whatsoever. And along the way, I started to sort of, remind her that, you should be writing more songs for the next record as we were sort of deep into a long campaign. And I got a lot of pushback. Like, I've already got my songs. I'm ready to go. And I was like, well, can I hear them? Can we start talking about them? And the answer was no. You'll hear them when I record them because they're great. And I was a little surprised that we had a good relationship. But she was very young, and her managers sort of also very much, protected her, as is their job to do so, but maybe a bit too much. So respectfully, and I've always been sort of an artist-friendly A&R person who always gives the artist the benefit of the doubt and always sort of, wants to side with the artist as opposed to, I don't want to be the big bad record company, you must do this, you must do that. So I sort of allowed the time and space, and went in, some months later, and there were no songs written, and the songs that started to emerge were not really songs. And I was, to the point of being surprised, I was very surprised. And also kind of terrified, because what do you do with that, and very, very much alone in the, I can't share this information because I have to fix it. I have to find a solution. And that was one of the first experiences that I had where I sort of leaned into the publishing experience I had on the A&R side and started really thinking about how to present the notion of collaboration with an artist who was decidedly against it, who swore she'd never collaborate, who swore she'd never do a publishing deal, who just was very insulated and also very naive. And I realized at that point exactly how naive, because when an artist becomes successful, even when they're young, everyone treats them differently, and all of a sudden they know all the answers. They have all the answers, and they're not questioned. And that was a very big lesson for me in many ways. One, realizing again that inner voice that was saying, like, I need to know more about what's going on here, and I had to sort of find a way to like infiltrate that thought process, but also do it respectfully, not to alienate the artist, not to be disrespectful to the process. And I really did respect her process and her art. But what I realized after, kind of leaning into okay, maybe you should try to work with this writer, or maybe you should try this. When I got no, my solution was, hey, there's an artist that's needing some help. And I kind of created a slightly fictitious scenario where I asked the artist to help co-write for someone else, not her. And that was the way I sort of broke the ice for an artist who was, terrified of, but also just really was sort of misguided about the value of collaboration. Like in her mind, this is going to water down my work, and I was like, no, it's actually going to help you if you're blocked. And so over the time, it came out she was scared, she was blocked, there was some other stuff going on, and when I got to that, I had to get to it sort of sideways. I had to get to it by leaning into her vision and expertise and saying, can you help this artist? And that, over time, kind of helped create the solution. And to this day, she still doesn't really love to co-write, but she co-writes, and she's written with other people for other projects, and that's more her comfort zone. And I had to sort of learn how to navigate that. But that was a big life experience before co-writing was as commonplace as it is today. But it also helps me even in work that I do with artists today to sort of explain that as like the value. Like, I'm not asking you to co-write because I'm not valuing your work or because I want to water down what you're doing. This is going to supplement, this can supplement, this can help you. And if you write a song that you don't love, you don't have to record it. You can give it to someone else, or now you can pitch it for sync. There's so many other creative ways you can use a really good song that you don't feel personally connected to. But I kind of learned all of that very early on in my career with this one particular artist, who shall remain nameless. But
That was super clever solution there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like
Sleight of hand.
a little sleight of hand, yeah. I know, slightly,
Good jump.
not being dishonest or disingenuous, but slightly, just trying to, curate the situation a little bit.
Excellent finesse. Thanks. I could jump in. As a young A&R, one of the first bands that I ever signed was a band called Mother Love Bone. And I was in Austin, Texas for South by Southwest, and I got that phone call at 3:47 in the morning that you never hope you get in life ever. That Andy, who was part of the band, had apparently had been clean and sober for a long time and fell off, and apparently there was some very bad heroin that was circulating in Seattle, and he was in a coma. And I was in South by Southwest setting up his record that was coming out 4 weeks later. And back in the day, for some of you who may or may not remember, there was this Four Seasons lobby that we all went through, and everybody's congratulating me, and the record's going to be massive, and they're going to be the next Guns N' Roses, and blah, blah, blah. So I ended up leaving that night. I flew to Seattle. Sadly, he passed, and there were this was a challenge on so many different levels, because I was in a place in my job at that time where it was really the only thing I had going on. I was working at Polygram. It had taken a year I was never a volume signer, so, I was sitting there with something I'd worked on for a long time, and, the record's coming out in a month. There's no singer, there's no band, and, obviously the remaining members said, we're not going to be doing this, and so, we collectively dusted ourselves off, and it was actually at a moment in time where it was basically halfway from sort of being thrown out the door. And I learned a lot about, resilience and relationships and family in that moment, because the rest of us who were all together without Andy, we're all sitting there saying, okay, what are we all going to do? And we just did the best we could, did what Andy would have told us to do, dusted ourselves off and said, okay, let's figure this out. And there were about 8 or 9 demos that existed at that time that didn't have vocals on them, and I was in between jobs about to start working at Epic with Lee, and was sort of in that halfway out the door, halfway in the door. And during that time we took these 8 demos and we circulated them, like made sense, and said, we're looking to take these really talented people from Seattle and find a new singer. And I handed a cassette to Jack Irons, who was a Chili Peppers drummer at the time. And I asked him if he wanted to join, because I knew they wanted him to join as a drummer, and he declined politely. And I said, well, if you know of any singers, please pass it along. And he said, okay. I didn't think much about it. And I guess about 2 or 3 weeks later, Jeff, the bass player, had gotten a call from Jack, who said that he had given the demo to a security guard living in San Diego, who had never really been in a band before and was working night shifts. And he went and put 3 melodies over these tracks. And those tracks and that band in that moment became Pearl Jam. And it was really magical. I remember crying in my car because I didn't think that any of us would really ever have a second chance. Yeah. So it was a great life lesson, because we all stuck together and we dealt with those kind of ultimate challenges and were able to kind of find our way through. So
Phoenix Rising.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the question is again, will you tell us again what the question is? It's like
It's about what, if you had a, like, what surprising challenge? What challenge just came out of nowhere?
And a solution.
And what was your
our
solution?
Okay. Well, from that emotional kid who, that I talked to, that, purportedly earlier, and considering everything that we have all said about what would we tell our younger selves, well, fast forward now, and I'll say becoming a producer was really fortuitous and not necessarily expected. It was glitter that came from my asking Van Deen, the Broadway producer. We call him Dean Van Deen, the Dean of Broadway. School is in session. And so I asked him 6 words. I was sitting in a car in December of 2013, and it was in New England, so it was really cold and snowy. And I'm texting Chris saying, I'm on the phone with Dean Van Deen, the Dean of Broadway, and I'll be inside in a minute, but I don't want to lose signal if I come inside. And I had asked him 6 words, what else are you working on? And that's how my world as a Broadway producer advented. And so I won't go into all of the details of that, because here we are, how many years later? 12 years later. But what I wanted to say also was, when we talk about a challenge, and this is copyright trademark Mia Maravis, Global Game Changer Summit 2023. Gatekeepers have no power if you don't stand at their gate. That does not apply to Van. He's very generous. But in our work, sometimes we can run up against walls, and it happens to be those walls are made of people. And one of the things that fast forward emotional girl, that I was when I was younger, when I said, Ben, when we were saying, do you trust that things will work out? It's not without hard work. I do want you to know I realize that. but also trusting that you'll evolve into making sure that what you want is what you'll get. And what Monica says, and we've all said, is about being kind and direct and honest as you do so, because tantrums never get you anywhere, and I'm not wired like that. But even fairly recently, we've in a little team here have dealt with some gatekeeping. And so I say, what's the solution? Gatekeepers have no power if you don't stand at their gate. So how do we not stand at their gate? Well, there's things called contracts, and there's other things in there called loopholes. And and I had an attorney friend whose dog was named Loopy, Loopy for loophole. And it doesn't ever have to get contentious or anything. I believe that the answer's always no if you don't ask. So where in this thing where I'm being told no is there permission? And how can I find it? I'm going to read every word. And there was a solution that I helped into place for a small team recently by finding in paragraph 3C, that this does not say we can't do this, so therefore they can have what they want. And when they put it forward to the gods, so to speak, they said, oh, that'll work. And then in another email immediately after, thank you for jumping through the hoops. And nobody got nasty, nobody got tantrumy, nobody cried. We just said, there's some kind of gatekeeping going on, but we're just gonna find the way to get around it, around the gate, to get what we want, because it had to be at that gate. The other thing I'll say about gatekeeping and that kind of thing is, sometimes you can bang and bang and bang on a gate because you think that's the one you've got to go through. But there's 4 others that are wide open welcoming you in, and you can't see it. So the other thing I say, the solution can be, remember, don't hold on so tightly that you can't see straight.
I love that.
Because everything we need is there. But if we're if we're rattled and we're upset and we're twisted up, we're not going to be able to get to the solution we need. And everybody who just spoke found ways to not be rattled, not tightened up, and with grace and aplomb and kindness. And so that's what I would say.
I love that. There's a book I read. I'm sorry, I can't remember who wrote it, but recently, in the last couple of years, I read it called The Third Door. That there's a front door, a back door, and a third door. The door nobody knows about, and you have to find. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. I did not read that book, but that sounds great.
Yeah, no, that sounds same
like
idea.
it.
Yeah. You could write the book
Yeah.
for your own
But
for Broadway.
There's been times where unsolicited people say, well, that'll never happen for you. That'll never happen for you. And I'm like, ooh, good golly, don't tell me that. Don't tell me something's not going to happen for me if I want it. But you also have to educate yourself on, you can take a big, thick contracting if you don't know what you're looking at, So you always have to educate yourself. And also, I would say another solution would be learn to play the piano.
Yeah, this is a good life skill in general, right?
Yeah. You can never go wrong if you can play.
Yeah, it's true.
For sure.
Good for every part. Music, I'll just say one thing and then I want to hear it. Music is the one thing that we know, science knows, that activates the entire brain. The entire brain. If you're playing music, your entire brain is active. Listening to music activates much of the brain, but it's actually playing and even specifically improvising activates the entire brain at once.
Mm-hmm.
So piano
and
bass.
I guess,
mandolin, bass, drums,
I guess it's up to me now. I don't-
clarinet, guitar, piano,
Voice.
voice, composition. We've got a lot of talented people in the house. Thank you for coming.
So I've been trying to think of an answer to your question, and I have a story. I don't know if it makes me look great. I don't know if I had much of a solution or if I had an option for a solution, but I think the ultimate answer from my story is you just got to be able to roll with it. So about 10, 15 years ago, there was like a good stretch, 5, 6 years, where I'd get flown to Cannes every year to play at this big party at the Cannes Film Festival, the Amphar Cinema Against AIDS. They would raise like crazy amounts of money for AIDS research every year. And my job was to go there and be ready to play with anybody. One year, Harvey Weinstein's like, hey, you guys know any Madonna songs? We did not end up playing with Madonna that year, but this was a long time ago. So one year, they're like, okay, you guys ready to play with Patti Smith and Lenny Kaye? And I'm like, sure. So we're backstage. I'm talking to her about Duke Ellington, which was like incredible experience. She used to listen to Ellington Indigo's, this record with her dad when she was a kid. And we got up there, and so basically they're raising money. So they say we're going to play a song, and people bid money, I guess. And so I'm up there and playing "Power to the People" with Lenny Kaye and Patti Smith, maybe the best musical experience of my life. And so then I'm sitting around backstage, and they're like, okay, guys, get back up there. You're playing with Mary J. Blige right now. I hadn't met her. They had cleared out the front dressing room because, she needed her space. So they put us out on stage. There's no rehearsal. There's no nothing. So we're just out on stage. They're like, okay, we're playing Stairway to Heaven in the key of D, which is not the original key. And so we're like, okay. And so we're trying it. It's not going great. This is Bill Clinton was the speaker that year. This is people like that are this is filled with people like that from all over the world. And it's not
Mary
going
J.
great.
Blige singing
And
Led Zeppelin is just enough.
She was singing. She was killing it, and she's looking at us. She's like, "Stop playing!" I'm just gonna do this a cappella. But I guess it was her husband or her manager was standing in front of the stage with a big red hat on, and he's yelling at us, "Keep playing, keep playing." And between lines, she's like, "Yo, stop playing. I'm gonna do this. I got this." And I don't know how we got through it, but I went from the best musical experience of my life to maybe the worst. And somehow I got through it. And I don't know, that's my story.
I love that story.
And we raised a lot of money for AIDS research.
I love that story. Even at the top of your game, you don't get a gig like that if you're not at the top of your game. They don't give gigs like that to clowns. They give them to great musicians. So what I think there's a lot of wisdom in there that even at the top of your game, you can have moments where you just feel like you're out of your depths for a variety of reasons. And it happens to everyone. And knowing that you can do that and at any time in your career and that it's okay. It's all right. You can have your best experience and your worst experience back to back. It's all good.
Within 5 minutes of each other.
Yeah, and it's all part of a rich, robust career. Was there something you took away from that experience? Was it go home and learn Stairway to Heaven?
Yeah, learn Stairway to Heaven in 12 keys.
Mary J. Blige singing Led Zeppelin is just enough.
I know.
She was great.
Yeah, amazing. We have time for some questions if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions? Anything you want to ask this amazing group of people? Oh, no, not yet? Okay. I'd like to hear what everybody's working on. What's next for everybody, or what's now for everybody?
Oh, okay. You want to jump in?
Yeah.
It's a wonderfully sort of busy year for us. We have an artist named Magdalena Bay who's playing Terminal 5 tonight. It's a duo from Florida. It's very sort of dancey and fun and pop and sort of lives in that sort of Charlie XCX world meets Porter Robinson, and it's really super fun. So we went to the show the other night. And a lot of artists in the studio. I have an artist named Del Watergap, who actually is an NYU grad that we're working on a record with. We have a band from Columbus, Ohio called Camp that we love very much, and they're about to go play a bunch of really, really big shows. And it's, obviously there's some things on the developmental side that we're working with as well. There's a band called Teen Jesus that we're working with, and it's a busy year for us. We're probably releasing maybe 11, 12, 13 albums this year. So
That's amazing.
There's a lot going on. So it's a fun time, and I'm psyched the fact that the weather's starting to get better, and because I feel like I haven't been to shows as much as I normally would go. So everything's kind of flipping, and Coachella started, and you know, that whole jolt to the end of the year is kind of on. So
Amazing.
Yeah,
Sounds
super
like you have
fun.
a great, great, great horizon
yeah,
for all of us.
yeah, super fun.
Yeah. Mia, what's next or now?
Well, we have 5 audio works in place, cinematic audio and audio theater. Those have been in various stages of production, and now they're finally heading right into post. Thank goodness. We are recording 2 of them next month. And of course, shows on the West End and Smash on Broadway.
Yeah.
And traditional pop, J.R. Heckman's traditional pop album, and a new age piece as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Tracy, what's going on?
So I am still consulting for SiriusXM on a couple of projects. I'm not really consulting, I'm just helping the urban department. We are hoping to do something with D-Nice for Black Music Month, and hoping to do, he's amazing.
I almost wore a BDP.
All right, Boogie Down Productions. And also an event prior to the Essence Festival of Culture, July 4th weekend in NOLA in New Orleans. So I'm hoping to announce those 2 things soon. But I'm really I've kind of had it with radio. And I want to get back into television and film. And I started a production company with longtime friend and collaborator Lauren Lazen, who directed the Tupac documentary, Resurrection. And I've just been tapped by Suzanne DePass and her partner, Madison Jones, to join their company as a consulting producer. And they have a ton of things going on. And that's really exciting for me because it's sort of like in music, but, sort of more visual.
Yeah.
I love radio. I love SiriusXM. I love working with my programmers there. They're just amazing people. But I really am ready to marry the 2 back together, the visual and the music, and doing more television stuff. And Suzanne DePass has been my shero my entire career. So to have the opportunity, to work for her and have her hand pick me to work with them, and her partner Madison Jones, who is an absolutely phenomenal writer, director, producer, I'm just feeling very blessed. So it's at the beginning stages, but they've got so much going on, so I'm very excited about that. And working with Lauren Lazen, who's just brilliant, so
I'm excited for you.
thank you.
Yeah, I can tell you're a super visual person. Every story you told was full of visuals, like you painted a movie, you're dressed like a work of art. So it's nice that you're getting to marry the music and the visual.
Again, I mean, it's sort of like going back to the days at MTV.
Yeah.
When I was there, when they were really playing a lot of music videos. And that was one of the best times in my career, because you could go in, you would sit at the Monday meeting, and then a week later, whatever idea was talked about was on the air. And that was amazing for somebody who came out of PR. You always wanted that instant gratification. So,
Yeah, exciting.
thank you.
Ben, what's next for you?
Well, I'm working with a few different artists right now on various records. Number 1 is a saxophone player named Caleb Wheeler Curtis. He's great, multi-reedist, also plays the trumpet. He's in Orrin Evans' big band.
Oh, cool.
And we've been making records for probably 13 years. He used to be in a band called Walking Distance, and we made a record with Jason Moran based off of Charlie Parker music a few years ago. And I've done several of Caleb's solo records, and the current record we're doing is really, really cool because the way it's designed is he is playing solo saxophone, and then I'm just putting whatever I want on it.
Oh, how fun.
So it's coming from my whole thing is one of my things is finding like new ways to imbue music with swing and jazz feeling without it being like 1950s hard bop, which we need and love, but I don't know if we need many more records of that genre. So so he will come in and he'll give me one of the songs we took is from the last record that we did that came out earlier this year called, oh my God, Bears, the true story of Bears and the invention of the battery, which is a record of his I produced with a trio. We took one of those songs, Arthur Blythe song called Odessa, and now I'm just doing all kinds of studio stuff to it, just like finding ways to take these melodies and present them in a brand new way with different sounds, maybe sounds that like people under 50 have heard before and can relate to. Not necessarily like beats, but that could happen. Sampling, synthesizers, studio effects and stuff. So that's one record I'm working on. Then I'm about to go in the studio next week with this politically minded hard rock band that I play in called Lower Power. We're going to do our third record, and it's going to take us 4 hours. No headphones, just like the last two. So the production of that is fast, but then the mixing usually takes a while. Then I'm also working on a boom bap hip hop record with a good friend of mine from Atlanta named East Midi. I met him through Master Ace. And East Midi is a triple threat. He's a Marvin Gaye level singer, a killer MC, and a songwriter. And so we've embarked on a record together, and we got a couple songs in. And then I'm also doing some mixing for Great Southern, which is kind of the remains of Dickie Betts from the Allman Brothers Band.
Oh, wow.
And so I'm just doing some mixing for them as well. So, got to keep it interesting.
That is very interesting, very eclectic.
Not
cool.
busy at all,
Yeah, I can't wait to hear. I can't wait to hear all of your projects. Lee,
Okay.
Yeah.
I know. Same thing. I have a lot of artists in the studio finishing up records. Taj Mahal has a new record with the Phantom Blues Band that will come out next year.
Love him.
that I'm extremely excited about with a song that Bill Withers had given him right before he passed. It's going to be the title track, and it's absolutely moving and emotional and makes me cry every time I hear it. That's really exciting.
He won a Grammy.
And he won a Grammy. Yes,
Yeah.
he did win a Grammy. Not our record, but
Still.
well-deserved Grammy. And I'm also working with Bela Fleck, and he's always making 3 records at the same time. So we've got a lot on deck with him. He's also producing an artist that I'm hopefully going to be working with. Bruce Hornsby's finishing up a record that I'm going to hear next week. I'm really excited about that. It sounds like a very kind of different type of a project for him, very appropriate to where I know his head's at. I'm really excited about that. Hopefully starting a new record with Corinne Bailey Rae in the maybe end of this year and New Year. She's kind of just wrapping her head around. She put out a record with us last year called Black Rainbows, which was a very different type of a project. It was really more like an art installation to music. I don't know how else to say it. Really gorgeous piece of music that was very unexpected. And I don't know how that's going to inform what she wants to do next, but I'm excited to hear what that could be. And then I have a developing artist, a band called Michigander, who are out now touring, who I adore. They're out and hopefully, building the next phase of their career, kind of an indie band that have been around for a minute.
Great
it's their
band.
first record.
I've seen them.
Thank
They're
you.
excellent.
Yeah, they're really fun. They were here in New York opening for Dawes last week, and they're really like road dogs. They play everywhere, and they're just Jason, the lead singer, just puts his heart on his sleeve for every time he gets on stage, and he's a really good songwriter. And a few other projects in development, a couple of things I'm looking at, and just very excited about everybody I work with. And and I have a label venture with Roseanne Cash and her husband John Leventhal, and we're sort of talking about what we're going to do with that. She's put out some catalog that has actually reverted back to her, that she owns. Wow. That's how we're starting, but we're talking about some new records, including something theatrical that they're working on. So I call you, Mayor.
There you go.
How exciting.
Yeah.
That's
And
very
the president
exciting.
There's
of our-
probably more,
and
but that's it, yeah.
And the president of our New York chapter.
And,
President of
yes,
our New York
and
chapter.
chapter stuff, always. Lots of cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, this is all wonderful. I'll say one thing. I've just released an album, a jazz album called Sweetness, in February, and I have some percolating shows that I can't talk about yet. But everything is, I've been writing music every day and doing this, and this has been so fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming
For having
here.
us.
So
Thank you
great.
for having us.
Thank you for the day that music cares for
You
the
know, people
Recording
are
Academy.
tears
Thank
and-
you for being here. Oh, do we have a question? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Victor Prasad Jr., multi-instrumentalist and I'm also part of the New York chapter for the Recording Academy. I wanted to ask, when it comes to contracts, what is the most important thing an artist should look out for while reading a contract that most artists overlook?
I would say the first thing to do is to get your own lawyer. Because a lot of times artists will take a recommendation from their manager or the label. And I think it's really important that the artist have their own lawyer that is looking out for their best interest and will sit with them and go through line by line everything that's in that contract. So that's something to be very, very careful with.
It's not your job to be a lawyer.
Correct. It's your job to be the artist, but to surround yourself with people who are going to protect you. And sometimes the manager is not always the best person to do that. They might have the long-range vision for you, but legally, you got to protect yourself. You got to have your own person looking out for your best interest.
And Tracy, how would you recommend someone find the right lawyer for them?
I would say you look at artists that are out there that are specific to your, or similar to your genre, and find out who their lawyer is. IMDb Pro is a really good resource, or there's a couple of websites that will tell you who the manager is for the artist, who the lawyer is for the artist. I would do my research and interview, sit with them, see what they say, and don't go with the first person that you talk to. Interview a few people, but it's good to know an artist that is in your specific genre or your format to find out who their lawyer is and sit and talk to that person. Maybe there's somebody at that firm.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Did anybody else want to contribute to that?
Well, just, I totally understand what you're saying and agree with it. I was asked to look at a very thick, lots of black ink contract for an artist, and all of it was fine except 5 words that would surrender everything. And so, it's like, oh, this looks really good, this looks really good, and then there were 5 words that could literally ruin it for the artist. And I said, tell them you want to scratch that out and put your initials by it, and say you'll do it if they initial that too. So it can be something as tiny as 5 words that can just change everything for you. They're famous for escape clauses.
Red line.
Yes.
I would also mention there's a resource called Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts.
Yeah.
Where if you're short on cash, you can get a pro bono lawyer to help you with arts contracts.
It's a great answers. Are there any other questions? Yes.
How do you manage, because you guys all have so many things to do, how do you do time management for yourself? Do you block out certain times, like do you sleep? Talk about your time management.
If it's okay to jump in on that one, I found that getting up early, especially during the week, has been wonderful for me, because while the world is still sleeping and I get to, number one, witness a beautiful sunrise, that's always keeps you calm. But I also found that I got so much done with that first cup of coffee, or whatever you prefer, but that first cup of coffee while everything was really, really quiet, and all the obligatory things I had to do, I was able to get done in 1 or 2 hours. And then the rest is whatever the glitter is that pops for the day. And also, I'm able to manage that forward by keeping a great eye on the calendar when I have that kind of peace and quiet. So that's what's worked for me. And it's like I said before, even to little Mia, it would be restore order, restore order. And in those hours where it's really quiet, I can do that and plan out. And sometimes I'm able to plan out a whole month. And that really works. And then once that's all in order and you just set reminders, I also set alarms for the next day as well. If I, and I write things in a paper calendar and also on an electronic calendar. And it depends where I'm looking, but I've always got what I've got to do close by. And it just keeps it all to a dull, glittery, happy roar instead of, oh my God, I can't believe I missed that meeting. I do go to sleep. I go to sleep fairly early, compared, you would think with so many Broadway shows, but usually what I'll do is I'll come back. I don't go out as much during the week after a Broadway show. I save that stuff for the weekend. And then once in a great, great while, the body wants to sleep till 11:30 on a Saturday, and I don't fight it. I hope that was helpful.
I have a slightly opposite schedule, and I don't know if it's as an A&R person. I gravitated towards a career that keeps me out very late at night, many nights a week, or if I acclimated to that. I don't know. I feel like I've always been kind of a night owl. And I was never a great sleeper, although I used to be able to sleep late. But having children taught me the art of sleep deprivation, and that's actually helped me tremendously in my career. There's an art to sleep deprivation, because I was the person who could sleep till, like, in my early years of doing A&R, staying out till 2 a.m, seeing bands, and I'd sleep on weekends till lunchtime, and I had my first kid, and I was like, wow, I don't know what this feels like. It's horrible, like having to get up early or the middle of the night, and I kind of acclimated to that. It's actually helped me schedule things better. And when you have something that has to be very intentional, like taking care of a child or a pet or something, I think it helps you focus, and it helps you, to what you're saying, Mia, like, put a calendar in front of you and now it's true, I have a bunch of different hats. I have a full-time job, I do Recording Academy stuff, I teach at NYU. I think I would evaporate without multiple calendars. I wouldn't get anything done, and I'm very organized now. But also I find sometimes I have to sort of take a day. If I have a long project with one particular aspect of my job, I will sort of dedicate a whole day. I'm not someone who can bounce from one here, I'm going to work on this for an hour and that for an hour. I sometimes have to really, or if I'm going to listen to music, if I have to sort of evaluate some of the music of artists I'm working with, I will dedicate a whole day, and it's usually a weekend or something where I'm not being distracted by the phone or email or something. I like to be in my car where it's private or in my house alone. For me, staying up late at night when my house is quiet, it's probably the equivalent of what you do in the morning, but I do it late at night. Sometimes my most productive hours are from 11 till 2 in the morning on a pretty regular basis, and I get a lot done, but I don't know that I would advise that for everybody, but if you're a night owl, it works.
Well, back in the day, my most productive time was 3 a.m. And then I had to cave.
I have a sort of an esoteric answer, but you're a wonderful musician, so I'll give you the musician esoteric answer. When you have to play a piece of music that is burning fast, and it's intimidatingly fast, and something in your mind has to slow it down so that you're not terrified of it. You have to say to yourself, this isn't fast. I got this. Yeah. It is fast, but you're not going to let yourself understand that until you've played it, and then you've done it, and you have the confidence of having done it. I think sometimes scheduling is like that. Anything I can do right away, I do it right away. Anything I can front load and do for the future, I front load and do for the future, and then I do a whole lot of winging it and slowing things down for myself, like just convincing myself that it's not that fast.
There's a mantra that I have, and it's plenty of gas, plenty of time. Plenty of gas, plenty of time. And that helps slow me down and eradicate overwhelm.
Also, I think setting the alarm on my phone to remind me about meetings, because we live in a world now where we all used to have, like back in the day, you had an assistant or a secretary to remind you to do things. Now it's like the phone, and I set it like 5 minutes before I have meetings so that it just reminds me that I have to do this, and that's been a godsend.
Do you ever do the thing where you go, okay, I'm going to take a shower at XYZ time, and then I'm going to set out my clothes, and then I'm going to answer all those phone calls. So then I have all these alarms on my phone. Set an alarm. Hey, Siri, set an alarm for 10:30 a.m. Set an alarm for 10:40 a.m. And then it's like, and then all the alarms go off, and I'm like, what was that one for?
You want to use reminders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of what we do is a lifestyle job, and
Yeah.
and you know, there's so many other people who have a much more sort of rigid kind of structured schedule, which is 10 to 6, and I think it's really important when you have a job that some people would perceive as very sort of social. In some ways, you know, when you're working on music during the day and then you're going out at night or having a dinner, this or that, I think what's really important psychologically is, you know, what are the things that can take me out of that environment? What are those hobbies? What are the things I can distract myself with? What are the things that I can do in order to stay fresh? And my wife tries to get me to sleep as much as possible.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have something right after us in this space. So we have time for anything else anybody wants to close with, or we can close right here. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I'm going rogue, and I'm going to spend the day with every single one of you and do all the cool things you're doing.
And is there any other last question before we close? No? Well, thank you guys for being
Thank you.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And thank
Great
you.
pleasure.
Having us.
It's been a pleasure.
I like the thoughtful questions. I really had to, really think through, okay, what's the best way to answer this? 'Cause